this is planning for a family child care home. We've done infant toddler, we've done preschool, we've done school age. So this is the last of the kind of age limit planning videos. We're gonna jump in to other lectures for the rest of the class. So this is kind of the last one about age-related planning programs. So as always, we know that childcare is expensive, but it's actually a little bit less, and that's why a lot of times people will choose family childcare. So it's about $13,000 for infant child care at a center, like a large center, and it's probably $8,500 to $9,000 a year at an in-home program. And this is nationwide. So it might be a little bit more or a little bit less depending on where you live. So this is nationwide. So childcare, in-home childcare providers provide a really important service for families. They can do kind of split schedules so that they can take children in the morning and then drop them off at school and then pick them up in the afternoon, which can be really important for working families. They can also provide cheaper kind of infant, toddler, and preschool care as well. And they typically can have more flexible hours because it's somebody's own home, their own program, so you can arrange with them the hours that you need. Full disclosure, I have never worked full-time in a family childcare. I did this as a substitute position when I was in college. So my really good friend, her next door neighbor, ran her own family child care center. It was a large family home one, so she had another person who worked there with her. She owned it and ran it. She had been working in a preschool for years and years, so she was really, really good at curriculum and lesson planning, space design, just from her years working in a preschool. The preschool actually sold management, and she didn't kind of agree with the direction that they were taking. They were going a bit more academic than she wanted, and she wanted it a little bit more fun. So she started her own program, and that was a great program for her as her kids were growing up, because one time I was her maternity leave person. So she was upstairs right after she had her baby, taking care of her baby for 2 weeks. And I was on break from college, and since I had all of my units, I was her maternity leave person just for 2 weeks. But then she got to be with her baby all day, but she was also taking care of the other kids as well. So anytime I was on a break from school, I would typically go and work at her childcare program with her, or I would sub for the person, her teacher that she had working with her, because she was a large family home. And so that was good too, is they kind of had a sub person. It was a little bit difficult if somebody got sick, because if I was at college, I mean, maybe if they asked me and I didn't have classes that morning, I could come for a couple of hours. But I also worked retail as well, so we kind of had to figure that out. So some of the advantages, like I was saying, is she got to care for her own child. So she had a really short actual maternity leave, but then she got to be with her baby all day long. She also had school-age children as well. So she would pick them up and drop them off. So she still had them with her as well. She had very close relationships. A lot of the children in her program had been with her since infancy as well. Some of the disadvantages, though, were it was longer hours, so they would ask her, hey, I've got a meeting at 7:30 down in San Diego, can I drop my kid off at 6? And you know, they arranged for that. That would be something that she might be able to do, and that can be really helpful for working families. There can be a lack of community or adult interaction for that teacher. In this case, since she was running a large family home, she had a teacher that worked with her full-time hours. And then I also subbed for her as well. And I remember the first day that I was doing the FCC with her, and I was like, I literally lived like 5 minutes away. So jump in my car, I'm gonna grab a burrito, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna watch One Life to Live. Because when I had started working for preschools a couple years earlier, I had gotten super into the soap opera One Life to Live. So yes, like, can I have my break at 1? I want to go home and watch. She was like, yeah. And then, so I was on my break, but she was so like desperate for adult interaction that I ended up just having my food there. And I just learned I had to bring my lunch every day and just kind of talk with her and chat with her as the kids were napping, because she kind of really was So that can be difficult. You know, you're with kids a lot, even if you have a large home and you have somebody working with you, it's just you and that person with a bunch of kids all day long. The parents and things like that, but you don't have a break room, you don't have staff, you don't have a director, it's just kind of you. Your home is your work environment. Typically it's a separate space, and it should be a separate space. So you still have your bedroom and you still have that. Areas where you can go after you're done working, but it also can be difficult to manage the other people who work in your home and keep your home and work life separate. And then pay can be variable. What's happening, who's paying, when do people leave? You know, if you only have 10 kids in your program, if one of them is a family of 3 and they leave, that's like a third of or a quarter of your income, and that can be difficult as well. This is a fantastic video about Natasha, who is a family child care provider. So I'm going to play that for you guys so you can get a chance to see this. This is from childcarevideos.org, and this is just talking about the wonderful role that our family child care program providers play in our community as they take care of children from their own homes.
Here in this country, we don't have enough care for our infants and toddlers, particularly our lowest income children. Women in low-income neighborhoods step up and they say, I'll take care of a neighbor's child, the sister's child, the grandchild. We have realized in all our kin is that we can invest in these women. We're going in and saying, you are doing the hardest job in the world. You are not getting paid enough to do it. You're not getting enough respect. And you're doing it anyway. And you're doing it because you care. That's like if we really want to transform the quality of child care in this country, we have to look at all the people that are caring for our children. We have to look at the women who are caring for children in their homes, and we have to embrace them in our systems of professional development. We have to pay them. We have to hold them accountable, but we have to give them the tools to deliver high quality care. They can rise to enormous heights, and they're just a huge overlooked part of our child care system.
So I think that's a good place to kind of start is they take a tremendous kind of responsibility in our community to care for children, and they do need extra support or just support in general. I think that most of us in early childhood education can agree that we do a lot of work for not as much pay and not as much prestige as more traditional public school teachers. And we do need to kind of change that as we need to get more resources that everybody can provide quality. So developmentally appropriate care throughout the day, and so mixed age. I mean, a lot of programs do have mixed age. That can be a big part of Waldorf and Montessori and Reggio and things like that. But mixed age really comes into play as we look at family childcare as well, because you're going to have younger children and older children in a actual small space home-like actual home environment. So the creative curriculum for family childcare, which is by Dodge and Coker, it's from 1991, and the one that I have is actually from 1991, but it is a classic, and some things have kind of changed. A lot of it really hasn't, especially when you are kind of striving for that balance between inside and outside, you know, gross motor and fine motor, quiet times and active times, especially if you have infants who need to sleep and maybe their routines are always changing and shifting, planned activities, and also unstructured play. So we feel this in all of our different programs, but I think because you're actually in a home, a smaller environment with a lot of mixed age, that's where some of these issues can come into play. So you have to be flexible to a routine and a schedule. So if you just had an infant room, it would be by routine. And if you had a preschool program, it would be a flexible schedule. But in FCC, you have both. And that is something that the creative curriculum helps with. And I also linked earlier or on the page before you enter into this lecture about Red Leaf, and they have some great ideas for curriculum as well. I have it as a Kindle, which I think was cheaper. I think it was $15 or something like that. And it is a fantastic resource for curriculum, and it's a little bit newer than the creative curriculum. Routines are very, very meaningful, meal times especially, and I'm so glad that I got to work in sub with the woman who did her FCC, because she did really great with meal times. First, she used the USDA food program, which a lot of FCC programs might feel hesitant in doing because they're smaller and they think the paperwork is not worth it, but she did. She involved the children in a lot of the routines. Fridays were like cooking days, and she would have the children, she had the child safe nights and things like that, and they would get some cooking instruction. They would bake bread, which is very Waldorf as well. And then the meal times just in general were kind of the best part of that mixed age grouping. So little ones sitting with the teacher, so an infant being held by the teacher as they're kind of engaging in really social time. And that's one of the great things about the home environment, is it's actually a home and there's tables everywhere, and it just feels more relaxed and home-like as they were having these meal times. And then hectic times as well. So she didn't do drop off and pick up for herself. So the program that she was running that I worked with was just her infant and toddler and preschool, but then her sons would come home from school and they would need to be added into the ratio. So she didn't have to kind of worry about drop off and pickup, but a lot of programs do, and that's where they kind of meet those needs of the working families. So, you know, some suggestions have been special stroller toys, or there are certain toys for particular times and they look forward to them. So if maybe getting the older ones down for a nap, the infants would know that there's a specific rattle or a specific thing that they can be doing while the older children are going down for naps, or vice versa. So that's part of that kind of balance. We have small family and large family child care homes, and I know I've talked about where I subbed, and she had a large family child care home, but I didn't kind of specify what the change was. So a small family child care home is number of children cared for, including children under the age of 10 who live in the home, is one of the following. So 4 infants or 6 children, no more than 3 of whom can be infants, because that's what they're really concerned about licensing, is the infant versus kind of older children ratio, because that's where it can be a little bit tricky. And then 6 children or up to 8 children where one child is at least 6 years of age and one child is enrolled or attending kindergarten, and no more than 2 infants are in care. So that's how they try to kind of negotiate as licensing who can be there, what are good ratios. So there is an assistant provider in the large family childcare, and that's what I was kind of talking about, is I would either sub for the woman who ran and owned and taught in her large family childcare, or the assistant provider who was a fully qualified teacher as well. I think she had a permit, she had worked for like a corporate program and kind of wanted a little bit more flexibility as well. And so they kind of ran the program together, and they were both fully qualified, had many years of experience in many units as well, and would actually go and, you know, do the Saturday classes that we have, you know, like art and things like that they were a little bit more interested in than they did. They had a very art and outside heavy program as well. They live, including children under the age of 10 who live in the home. The assistant providers, children under the age of 10 is 12 infants. So I think she always topped out at 10, no more than 4 of whom can be infants, and up to 14 children. Yeah, so she had 10 children in the program, and I want to say 3 were infants, because she had to consider her 2 children when they came home from school who were under the age of 10. So that's why she had 10 that she cared for, because her children before and after were under the age of 10. So that's why she had 10. Up to 14 children when one child is at least 6 years of age and one child is enrolled and attending kindergarten or elementary school, and there are no more than 3 infants in care. So that is kind of the the definitions of those. Then substitutes, or any kind. I think it's just really important to have written and signed plans for sickness, injury, vacations, and how you're going to communicate that with the parents as well. So I've highlighted Tom Copeland, and I linked to his blog in the page before you access this video. He is probably the guru when it comes to family child care contract, law, paper keeping, taxes, food, calendars, anything. And if I'm talking about any kind of contracts in family child care, it is coming from Tom Copeland. He's amazing. I have 2 of his online Kindle books for contracts because I have used them, and I've never run a family child care, but I've used them just as a director because his writing is really good. He's very accessible for people. It's very sound when it comes to the legal, but it's not a bunch of legalese, so everybody can kind of understand it. Because it's really important that you communicate if you're running a large family home with your substitute and also with your assistant provider about what should happen if they're sick or they get hurt or vacations or paid time off, anything like that, and also with your substitutes and how you're going to pay them as well. And then also he is great for writing contracts because I think you need to have an ironclad contract with parents because parents, unfortunately, especially working families, will sometimes try to push the boundaries. They'll try to pay later because they're struggling financially. They won't want to pay late fees. They will try to pick up a little bit later, and not every parent, but some parents. So having those ironclad kind of contracts can be really, really important as well. So if it's only one person, what is the plan and how do you communicate this to your parents about if you yourself as just a one-person provider get hurt, break your arm, break your foot? If you get sick, if there's a family emergency, are you just going to shut down? Are you going to give them information about other places that they can take children, drop-in care? Consider college students like myself as an as-needed or temp basis as well. So only knowing that, maybe summers and Christmas and spring breaks and things like that, they might be around, but that might be a good time for you to schedule your own vacations. You'll still have to be on site, but if you just need a little time out of the classroom and you want to be upstairs or taking care of your life or hanging out with your own children one-on-one, you might be able to do that. Or you're just going to shut down for a week so you can actually get out of town as well. And then mildly ill care for children who are too sick to attend, because it is something that I've seen. A lot of times FCC providers will be a little bit lenient and a little bit lax on our health observations, our daily health checks. Not everybody, but sometimes it's much easier for the parents that you have a close relationship to be like, please, can I have them? And then everybody gets sick, you get sick. So they need to have the same health standards as other programs, and then we need that mildly ill care for children who are too sick to attend. So communicating with families, which I've kind of alluded to, and Tom Copeland is a great resource. You can actually buy a family contract from him. So you have close, wonderful, warm, informal relationships with family, but it's still business. You are taking money and you are providing a service. So a strong written policies that are communicated clearly from day one are incredibly necessary. And you need a lot of written approval for licensing for those small and large family homes as well. And you need the same amount of paperwork. I think people forget that as well. You still need to have emergency contacts. You still need to have a policy about leave. You still need to have parent handbooks. All of that, you're still going to need a certain amount of that. So if you cannot, so your license as your own person cannot be transferred to another location or to another person. So if you have it in your house, you can't move to another house and keep the same license. You're still gonna have to have licensing come out and make sure and inspect the space and make sure that you have set it up appropriately, and you can't just sell your house and then give your same license to a person who maybe wants to buy the business from you. They're gonna have to get their own license as well. So the interesting thing about this is that you basically need 10 years of materials. So you need 10 years worth of toys, materials, so you can have a baby and you can have a 10-year-old. So you really need to kind of consider that when you are doing space planning, is you need space for it, you need materials that are going to be okay with the 10-year-old and okay with the baby. Some things 10-year-olds can't do. They're not gonna be able to have a lot of, they can have push pins to put their work on the wall, and they're gonna have to use tape or something like that, because that would never be appropriate with a baby. So we need to kind of consider that when we're planning. And I think the interesting thing is, and I kind of think it's funny. Some of the FCCs that I've gone to myself, but maybe that I haven't worked at, are really trying to be more like professional and more preschools. And then the preschools I go to, they're trying to be more home-like, more soft, more. And so it's like, just be who you are. So if you're a family childcare, and that's why I put this picture up, is you can have, you know, interesting things like this. You can have chickens, as long as you approve it with licensing. You can even have goats and things like that as well. You can have trees, you can have grass. It's going to be easier to maintain it. You can use a lot of natural materials. You can have things hanging, because this is from a family childcare. So backyards, parks, open spaces, that's how they develop their motor skills, and this should be part of any program. If you're in a apartment, then you'll use a nearby park or an open space, and that's planned into your curriculum that every single day you go there, weather permitting. How are you going to get them? What kind of strollers are you going to have? Are you going to be in a car with car seats? Having to bring all of the medical information, first aid kits, and parent information and contacts as well. But this is the great thing, and this is from Red Leaf that I've kind of talked about already, is encouraging toddlers and preschool age in their self-help skills. So putting on their own jackets and shoes, having cubbies that are easily accessible. And children from FCCs are typically having more adaptive or self-help skills. And they're also, because it's mixed age, they get that wonderful experience of helping younger children as well. But when you're outside, infants can play on a blanket or even in a low crib while they're doing bubbles and music, and they can be watching a preschooler on a tricycle or on playground equipment or painting as well. The great thing about backyards is you can have gardening, you can have water and sand, you can have small equipment, you can have wild animals, licensing permitting, once again, not wild animals, but like farmyard animals, licensing permitting, once again. The safety thing though is really, really important though, because other people live there. And so your safety checklist is more important, I would say, than a program, because if you have a lot of people living in your household, you need to make sure that your husband didn't leave a mower out, that your grandma didn't leave out the bleach bottle, that everything is stored, locked away, and is really appropriate, because we want to make sure that children aren't touching mowers with, you know, very sharp blades. The bleach isn't being left out where a child may be able to get to it, or even a knife. If somebody in the family, like an older child, a 17-year-old, went to go make a snack in the kitchen that's open, and they left a knife out, that could be an issue as well. So training the people and having checklists is really important. You also have to get a fire clearance from a fire authority as for a large family home as well. And then the inside and outside environments. And licensing is really aware of these kind of challenges. I one time had a licensing analyst come to one of her programs, and she asked me about guns. And this is like a traditional like preschool program at a center. It was in a church, and I'm like, guns? Oh, guns? Like who would have a gun at a preschool? And she was like, well, this is for like FCCs, like if they have a gun, it's gotta be, and tells me about all the licensing regulations. It makes sense that you asked me that, but I was like, you know, we wouldn't have a gun at a church basement where we're having a preschool. And she was like, well, we need to ask sometimes, and for our FCCs. So licensing knows about the challenges and the issues with running a program out of your house, and hopefully you can have a good relationship with your licensing analyst. If not, we also have licensing advocates. You can have a better relationship, and it's a free service. The one that I know is up in Orange County. I know there's one down in San Diego, but that's the one that I know is up in Orange County. And they will come out and talk to your program, and they will talk with you, and they will support you, and they can kind of have more of that relationship if you're not able to kind of have it with your analyst right now, because you know they're a little bit stretched thin. But the advocate, and if you want to know more about that program, you can email me. Health concerns, so it's anything with children: hand washing, diapering, cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting. So it would be exactly the same, and we're going to talk more about health and safety in following weeks, but also communicating your health concerns to your own family members. So no smoking, food preparation and storage in your home kitchen. So some programs are fantastic. If they have the space, they'll have their own prep area. So the FCC that I worked at, her husband was a contractor, so he made her own kind of kitchen addition. So she was really lucky that she kind of had this family member who went all in and built her sheds to store all her materials and things like that. You might not have that opportunity, so you have to communicate with the people who live in your own house about what is your school food. You need to follow the food safety procedures for it as well. If your own child is sick, are you going to work or are you not going to work? Is another family member going to take care of that child? So how are you going to communicate that health? And then also in the bathroom for the children, you need to communicate how it's going to be cleaned or not. Are family members going to have access to the bathroom? How are the children going to have access to the sink and the toilet? That might not be made for little ones. So that is something that you kind of have to communicate and you have to think about when you're running your own FCC program. And then transportation is another issue as well. You need to have a California licensed driver. That person needs to be insured and the car needs to be insured as well. You need to have active and current registration. You need to have car seats appropriate for all of the children and boosters. And basically California law says that children until they go to prom are going to be in some kind of booster or car seat. But you know, it's like 8 or 60 pounds, I believe is what it is for the last time I kind of looked at it. So we need to make sure we have the booster or car seat appropriate for that child. What is the type of vehicle? There's no smoking in the car. If you are leaving, you need to bring the contact information for all the children. You need to bring their medical authorization forms because you're still having the same paperwork requirements for your own in-home care. You know, have medicines in a locked case, especially like EpiPens that should always travel with you. And you should have some kind of first aid kit, and the person who's going should be certified in pediatric CPR and first aid as well. Clearances and liability, you must carry liability yourself, and Tom Copeland is a good source for this as well if you are looking to do this. And then any applicants and all adults that live in the home must obtain the criminal record clearance and be checked against the Child Abuse Central Index as well. So if you've had any prior allegations or investigations, it will show up in that Child Abuse Central Index, and that could affect your ability to have it. And that includes all adults who live in the home. So they might not be teaching, but if they live in the home, they need to have their criminal record clearance and that kind of check with child abuse as well. Some more trainings and resources. So in addition to Tom Copeland, in addition to the creative curriculum for FCC providers and Red Leaf, UC Davis has childcare at its best, and I've linked it right here for you guys. This is free trainings and support for kind of excellent family childcare programs. And I do think it's really, really great. It's from UC Davis, from the college. And so we know that they have good information. It's a credible source and a credible resource. And then just kind of seeing and prioritizing excellence, I think is such a fantastic thing in early childhood education, but especially in family childcare. So I love this resource if you are looking to do it. Tom Copeland, and those 2 books that I mentioned are going to really set you up. And then some of your other licensing training requirements is you need to have health training. I would suggest the health, nutrition, and safety class that we have within the community colleges. You're going to get a lot of good information about communicable diseases, health conditions, children with special needs, menus, especially because you're now, unless you have the children bringing their own meals, which some programs do, if you are providing the menus, that class is really going to set you up well. Pediatric and CPR and first aid, it needs to be for the person who's going to be on site, so that's typically that one provider or owner of the program. And then we have the online child abuse program as well. So that online training program, each person needs to do that and be current in that as well. I think every person should take that. I actually give extra credit to my Cal State classes for people if they do that as well. Because I teach in human development, they're going to go work with humans, and I think it's really important for everybody to do that online training. So in conclusion, family child care providers really fulfill a very important community need for working families who maybe need pick-up, drop-off, they need infant and toddler, they want their children in the same home, they like the home-like environment, or sometimes it's cheaper as well. These FCC providers do need to hold themselves to a really similar professional standard, especially for health. We need to have the same exact standards. Safety, even more so, because you have more people living in the house. You have a lot of different mixed age groupings as well. There are different licensing guidelines because they understand that in-home care is a little bit different. They need to plan for curriculum and plan for an environment that's going to meet the developmental needs of many different ages, pretty much over a decade, 10 years of differing developmental needs, and then transportation concerns as well. All right, guys, thanks so much, and I will see you online.